I've ever felt like I was just a background character in someone else's show. That's exactly how I felt on a Friday night 6 months ago. Emma had dragged me to this rooftop party at The View, Chicago's newest luxury high rise. I use the term our friends loosely because half the people there were just familiar faces I couldn't even name. It was the kind of crowd where everyone knows someone, but nobody really knows anyone. A mix of coworkers, old classmates, and those random plus ones that somehow become regulars. Take Blake, for example. He'd only been part of this group for about 6 months. Nobody even seemed to know where he came from. One day, he just started showing up at these gatherings. Blake had this way of always being in the middle of things, cracking jokes that weren't particularly funny, but somehow still getting laughs. Emma thought he was hilarious. Me? I thought he was an attention-seeking tech bro with too much hair gel. Emma had her social butterfly game on lock that night, like always. She floated from group to group, laughing loudly, flipping her perfectly styled hair. That megawatt smile she saved for everyone but me. I stayed in the background, sipping my whiskey and pretending to enjoy myself while she basked in the spotlight. I might have let it slide, maybe chalked it up to Emma just being Emma, but then I noticed her phone. It was sitting on the table, buzzing like crazy. She'd glance at it, smile this sly little smile, then flip it face down. "Who's texting you so much?" I asked, trying to keep it casual. "Work," she replied without even looking at me. "Work? At this hour?" She finally glanced up, her face already wearing that exasperated expression she saved just for me. "Not everyone clocks out at 5, Jack. Some of us have to hustle." I bit my tongue and let it go, but my gut was twisting. Then it happened, the moment that would replay in my head over and over. Emma stood up, glass in hand, and tapped her fork against it. The room quieted, all eyes on her. She loved that, being the center of attention. "To my husband, Jack," she began, smiling sweetly at me. For a second, I thought maybe she was about to say something nice for once. "Wrong. Jack," she continued, "the man who's reliable, dependable, and always consistent. Like a Toyota Camry." Laughter rippled through the room. I felt my face heat up. "Not exactly exciting," she added, her smile widening into something razor sharp. "But hey, it'll get you where you need to go." The laughter got louder. Let's not forget his fascinating ability to turn any conversation into a lecture about investment portfolios. Truly, a man of many spreadsheet talents. She sat down, looking way too pleased with herself. Blake, of course, was laughing the hardest, slapping the table like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He leaned over to me, still chuckling, and said, "Man, she's got you pegged." "Huh? Gotta love her senso. F humor." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Leaning toward Emma, I hissed, "What the hell was that?" "It was a joke," she said casually, swirling her wine. "Relax. Publicly humiliating me is your idea of a joke." "God, Jack, stop being so sensitive," she snapped, finally looking at me. "It's not that deep." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed again. She picked it up, her thumbs flying across the screen, that same smug smile creeping back onto her face. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed back my chair and stood up. "I need some air," I muttered, walking toward the exit. The rooftop air was cool, crisp, and thankfully quiet. I leaned against the railing, staring out at the Chicago skyline, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. Was I overreacting? Maybe. But Emma's behavior wasn't just off tonight. It had been like this for weeks. The constant phone buzzing, the distant attitude, the way she seemed to light up for everyone else, but barely glanced in my direction. And now this public roast session. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Emma. "You okay? Don't take it so seriously. You know I love you, right?" I stared at the screen. The words felt fake, like she was checking a box rather than genuinely caring. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't reply. When I walked back inside, The vibe at the table felt different. Or maybe it was just me. Emma was deep in conversation with Maddie, her best friend and biggest enabler. Maddie kept glancing at me with this smug little smirk like she knew something I didn't. Blake, of course, was still lounging in his chair, scrolling through his phone and occasionally laughing to himself. Every time he glanced up at Emma, there was this look, something between amusement and, I don't know, satisfaction. Jack, my man, one of the guys called out, waving me over. Lighten up, grab another drink. I forced a weak smile and headed to the bar, ordering another whiskey and keeping my eyes on Emma. She was laughing loudly, tossing her hair like she didn't have a care in the world. And then I saw it. Maddie slid Emma's phone across the table. Emma picked it up, looked at the screen for a split second, and bit her lip to hide a smile. Then, just like before, she flipped the phone face down. That was it. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I walked back to the table, leaned in close, and said, "We're leaving. Now." Emma looked up at me, her perfectly shaped eyebrows arching. "What? Why?" "Because I said so," I replied, my voice sharp. Maddie, ever the instigator, chimed in. "Oh, come on, Jack. Let Emma have some fun. She's been working so hard lately." My jaw tightened. "Emma," I said, locking eyes with her, "if you don't get up right now, I'm leaving without you." She rolled her eyes and grabbed her bag, tossing her napkin onto the table like it was some great inconvenience. "Fine, if it's that important to you." The W. Out to the car was suffocating. Emma crossed her arms and stared out the window the entire drive home, her silence louder than any argument. I didn't say a word either. My mind was racing, and for the first time, I wondered if I really wanted to know what was going on, or if it was already too late. By the time we got home, the silence between Emma and me was like a black hole, sucking all the air out of the car. She didn't slam the door when she got out. That would have required too much energy. Instead, she gave me this dramatic sigh like she was the one who'd been wronged and headed straight inside. I followed her in, tossing my keys on the counter and watching as she kicked off her heels and grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "You want to tell me what that was all about?" I asked, finally breaking the silence. Emma looked at me like I'd just asked her to solve calculus. What was all about? The toast, the phone, Blake laughing like an idiot the whole time. Take your pick. She rolled her eyes and leaned against the counter. "Oh my God, Jack, it was a joke. You're so dramatic." "You called me a Toyota Camry, Emma," I said, my voice rising. In front of everyone. Her lips curved into that smug little smile she'd perfected over the years. "Well, you were reliable." I felt my grip on the counter tighten. "This isn't about the damn toast. You've been acting different. Distant. And don't even get me started on your phone buzzing all night." Emma crossed her arms, her smile disappearing. "I'm sorry if I don't want to spend every minute of my life coddling your ego, Jack. Maybe you should take a look at yourself for once." That was it. I walked past her and into the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My heart was racing, and my head felt like it was about to explode. But then I noticed her purse, carelessly tossed onto the bed. And sticking out of it like a golden ticket was her iPhone. I should have stopped myself. Really, I should have. But my mind was racing with all the little moments from the past few months. The late nights. The whispers between her and Maddie. The constant excuses to catch up with friends. And now Blake, smirking at me like he knew something I didn't. So yeah, I grabbed the phone. The screen lit up with a message notification. My stomach dropped. "Blake, you were on fire tonight. Can't stop thinking about that dress." I didn't even hesitate. I unlocked her phone. Emma never bothered with a complicated passcode, and opened the messages. There it was, a thread between her and Blake that stretched back weeks, maybe months. I didn't even have to scroll far to see the kind of stuff that would turn any guy's stomach. "Blake, last night was amazing. I haven't stopped thinking about it." "Emma, me too. Can't wait for the next time." My hands were shaking, But I kept scrolling, each message hitting harder than the last. There was no room for interpretation, no maybe it's just friendly banter. This was exactly what it looked like. And then it got worse. I scrolled up to the beginning of their thread, back to the first message Blake had ever sent her. Blake, hey, Maddie said I should reach out. She thinks you could use a distraction. Maddie. Of course she was involved. I set the phone down for a moment, trying to process what I just read. My head was spinning, and all I could feel was this overwhelming cocktail of anger, betrayal, and disgust. But I wasn't done. I opened her photos next. I know, at this point, I'd crossed every boundary there was. But something in me needed to see it all, to get the full picture. There were selfies of them together, tucked away in a hidden album. Pictures of them at places I didn't even recognize. One of them was from 2 weeks ago, taken in a little cafe downtown. The same day Emma had told me she was stuck in back-to-back meetings. And then there was the video. I didn't even press play. Just seeing the thumbnail, her leaning into him, laughing like he'd just said the funniest thing in the world, was enough. I quickly sent everything to my phone, just in case. I locked her phone, dropped it back onto the bed, and sat down, my head in my hands. This wasn't just some stupid fling. This was calculated, planned. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the effort she'd put into hiding it. The way she'd made me feel like I was the problem while she carried on behind my back. The bedroom door creaked open, and Emma stepped inside. Her expression shifted from annoyance to suspicion the moment she saw me sitting there. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her eyes flicked to her phone, and I could see the panic starting to set in. I held up the phone, my hands shaking. "Care to explain this?" Her face hardened. "Were you going through my stuff? Are you seriously turning this around on me right now?" I snapped, standing up. "How long, Emma? How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, her lips curling into that infuriating smirk again. "Does it matter?" I felt something inside me snap. "Does it matter?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been sneaking around with him, that smug, self-absorbed jackass. And you have the nerve to act like I'm the one in the wrong?" Emma stepped forward, her tone icy. "Oh, please, Jack. Maybe if you weren't so busy being boring, I wouldn't have needed someone else to remind me what fun feels like." I grabbed her phone and, without thinking, threw it into the trash can by the bed. It landed with a satisfying thunk. Emma's eyes went wide, and for the first time all night, she looked genuinely angry. "What the hell, Jack?" she shouted, rushing to the trash and fishing it out. "Are you insane?" "Not insane," I said, my voice low and steady. "Just done. Done with you, with him, with all of it. You threw our marriage in the trash. Thought I'd return the favor." She looked at T. He phoned, now scuffed and slightly dented, and then back at me. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but instead, she let out a bitter laugh. "Fine," she said, grabbing her bag. "You want me gone? I'll go. You'll see how much you miss me when you're sitting here alone, boring yourself to death." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. And just like that, she was gone. I sat back down on the bed, staring at the trash can where her phone had landed just moments before. My chest felt hollow, like someone had carved out everything inside me and left nothing but the echoes of her last words. I didn't know what was next, but one thing was clear. The life I thought I had was over. The house was eerily quiet after Emma left. Her designer perfume still lingered in the air, a sickly reminder of her presence. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, which now held all the evidence I'd copied. The images, the texts, the sheer audacity of it all. It was like reliving a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point, the silence became unbearable. My chest was tight, my mind racing with 1,000 questions and not one answer. Why Blake? Why now? And how the hell had I been so blind to all of it? I needed someone to talk to, someone who could help me make sense of this chaos. So I called Mike. Mike had been my best friend since we were kids in Minnesota. The kind of guy who always knew how to keep things grounded. He lived in Seattle now, but distance never stopped us from keeping in touch. If there was one person who could cut through the noise in my head, it was him. Jack, what's up, man? You sound weird, Mike said as he picked up. Emma's cheating, I blurted out. I didn't have the energy for small talk. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Shit, he said finally. You sure? Yeah, I said, my voice shaky. Texts, photos, the works. It's with Blake of all people. Blake? That startup douche? Jesus. I knew he was trouble. But this. Mike let out a low whistle. Man, I'm sorry. That's rough. I filled him in on everything, the toast, the texts, the photos, all of it. Mike listened without interrupting, letting me unload every detail. When I finally stopped talking, he sighed. Look, I know what you're thinking, he said, but going after Blake? Not worth it. I wasn't going to. I started, but Mike cut me off. Don't lie to me. I know you, Jack. You're probably picturing yourself knocking his teeth out right now. But listen to me. That's not the play. You don't want to be the guy who lets a scumbag like Blake drag you into something stupid. Handle this smart, not angry. He was right, of course, but knowing he was right didn't make the anger go away. What do I do then? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You do what she never expected, Mike said. You get everything in order, lawyer up, protect yourself, and let her feel what it's like to lose for a change. The next day, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I barely slept, and when I did, my dreams were filled with fragments of Emma and Blake laughing together, mocking me. I dragged myself out of bed, made some coffee I couldn't taste, and sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. That's when I decided to call Maddie. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to get out of her. An explanation, an apology maybe. I just wanted her to admit what she'd done, to own up to the fact that she'd handed Blake the keys to my marriage like it was some kind of sick joke. Maddie answered on the second ring, her tone bright and chipper like nothing was wrong. Jack, what's up? She said. I didn't waste time. What the hell were you thinking, Maddie? There was a pause. Excuse me. You know exactly what I'm talking about, I snapped. Blake, you introduced him to Emma. You encouraged this. Don't play dumb with me. Maddie let out a dramatic sigh, the kind she always used when she thought someone was being overly emotional. Look, Jack, I don't know what you're accusing me of, but whatever's going on between you and Emma is not my business. Not your business, I said, my voice rising. You're the one who told Blake to reach out. I saw the text, Maddie. Don't even try to deny it. Okay, fine, she said, her voice suddenly sharp. Yeah, I told him to talk to her. So what? Emma was miserable, Jack. She needed someone who could make her feel alive again. Her words hit like a slap. Alive again? Are you kidding me? She's married to me. She could have come to me if she had a problem. But instead, she sneaks around with Blake. And you just what? Cheer her on? You don't get it, Maddie said, her tone condescending. Emma's been unhappy for years, Jack. She felt trapped, and honestly, I don't blame her for wanting more than this. This? I repeated, stunned. What the hell does that mean? You're boring, Jack, Maddie said, her words cutting like a knife. You're predictable. Emma wanted excitement, and you? Well, you're just you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this is my fault now? She cheats on me, and somehow I'm the bad guy. I'm not saying it's all your fault, Maddie said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. But maybe you should have seen this coming. That's when I lost it. You know what, Maddie? You're as bad as Blake. You act like you're above everyone, but all you do is stir the pot and watch the fallout. If Emma needed someone to remind her what alive feels like, maybe you should have pointed her to a therapist instead of the first douchebag you could find. Before she could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in days, I felt clear. That night, I made 2 calls. The first was to Sarah Chun, the best divorce attorney in Chicago. I needed to get ahead of this, protect myself, and make sure Emma didn't walk away with more than she deserved. The second call was to Mike. She's not going to see this coming, I told him, pacing my living room. I've got the texts, the photos, everything. Sarah said it's solid. She's going to lose. Mike let out a low chuckle. That's the Jack I know. Smart, strategic. Keep your head in the game, man. Don't let her pull you down to her level. Don't worry, I said, a grim smile forming. I'm just getting started. A few days after the Maddie call, I was starting to feel a little steadier. Sarah had already begun drafting paperwork, and I was consolidating everything I could to protect myself financially. I wasn't exactly fine, but I was functional. Then Emma texted me, "We need to talk," for words that made my blood boil. No apology, no explanation, just Emma being Emma, acting like she was still calling the shots. I didn't respond. Instead, I went home that night, locked the door, and braced myself for whatever hurricane she planned to unleash. Sure enough, around 8 p.m., Emma showed up. She didn't knock, she just walked in like she still owned the place. I was sitting on the couch going through emails and didn't bother getting up. "Make yourself at home," I said dryly. She ignored the sarcasm and dropped her designer bag on the counter. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms like she was the one with grievances. "I'm not interested in whatever justification you've cooked up," I replied, not even looking at her. "God, you're so dramatic, Jack," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This isn't about justifying anything. It's about, I don't know, closure." "Closure," I repeated, finally looking at her. "You think I'm going to sit here and give you closure after everything you've done?" Emma's jaw tightened. "You make it sound like I set your house on fire." "People cheat, Jack. It happens. Grow up." That was it. I stood up, my fists clenched at my sides. "You're unbelievable. You know that. You didn't just cheat. You humiliated me. You lied to my face. And now you're standing here acting like it's no big deal. What the hell is wrong with you?" Emma's expression didn't waver. If anything, she looked annoyed. "Oh, stop playing the victim. You think you were some perfect husband? You were boring, Jack. Predictable. All you ever talked about was work, bills, and retirement plans. I needed something more. So naturally, you turned to Blake?" I shot back. "A guy who probably spends more time picking out his Instagram filters than paying his rent." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Blake made me feel alive. Something you haven't done in years." The room went silent. Her words hung in the air, venomous and calculated. I could feel my chest tightening, my heart pounding in my ears. "You're disgusting," I said, my voice cold. "And for the record, Blake doesn't make you feel alive. He makes you feel validated, which is probably the only thing you've ever cared about." Emma laughed, actually laughed, and shook her head. "Wow, you really think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? That holier-than-thou attitude is exactly why I stopped trying with you." "Stop trying," I barked, stepping closer. "Don't kid yourself, Emma. You never tried. You just pretended to be perfect while blaming everyone else for your miserable existence." Her face darkened, but she didn't back down. "At least I didn't waste my life being mediocre, Jack. Face it, you're nothing special. Blake might not be perfect, but at least he's exciting." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, real exciting. Let's see how thrilling he is when he inevitably screws you over. You think you're special to him? You're just another fling, Emma. And when he moves on, you'll have nothing left." For the first time, I saw something crack in her, just for a moment. But she recovered quickly, her smirk returning like armor. "Better than being stuck with you." That was when I knew there was no saving this conversation, or anything else. "You're pathetic," I said quietly. "Get out." She tilted her head, as if considering whether to argue, then grabbed her bag. "Fine, But don't come crying to me when you realize how much you'll miss me." I didn't respond. I just stood there, watching as she walked out the door without so much as a backward glance. The next day, I told Sarah everything. The texts, the photos, the financial discrepancies, every disgusting detail. She listened carefully, her pen flying across the notepad as I spoke. When I finished, she looked up and said, "She's going to fight back." "Let her," I said. "She doesn't deserve a dime." Sarah smirked. "With what you've shown me, she's not going to get one either." That small victory was the first thing that made me feel remotely human in weeks. Later that evening, I got a text from Maddie. "You really need to apologize to Emma. She's been through a lot." I couldn't believe what I was reading. Apologize to the woman who cheated on me and blamed me for it? I texted back, "She's been through a lot? Are you serious? She's the one who ruined this marriage. Maddie, stay out of it." Her reply came almost instantly. "You're being petty, Jack. If you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened." I stared at my phone, my anger bubbling over. How could someone be so delusional? Maddie wasn't just enabling Emma. She was actively rewriting history to make her the victim. I texted back, "Thanks for the unsolicited advice, Maddie. Maybe you should take a look at your own life before lecturing me on mine." I hit send, blocked her number, and threw my phone onto the couch. I was done playing nice. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anger, the frustration, the sheer absurdity of it all. It was like a storm raging in my head. But underneath, there was something else. A strange, bitter clarity. Emma and Maddie. You weren't just toxic. They thrived on it. They lived for drama, for control, for the satisfaction of seeing others squirm. And for years, I'd been their perfect target. Not anymore. A few days later, I started hearing from mutual friends. The fallout from Emma's little confession had clearly spread through our social circle like wildfire. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, missed calls, most of them from people I hadn't spoken to in months, but who suddenly cared deeply about my personal life. The first one I answered was from Amanda, one of the quieter ones in the group. Someone who, honestly, I never thought had much of an opinion about anything. "Jack," she started, her voice cautious like she was afraid I might explode on the other end of the line. I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" "Define okay," I replied, leaning back in my chair. There was a long pause. Then in a rushed whisper, Amanda said, "Look, I just wanted you to know that a lot of us, well, we saw this coming." I sat up. "Saw what coming?" "Emma and Blake," she said, her voice dropping even lower. "It's been obvious for a while. The way they acted at parties, how they'd sneak off to talk alone. Honestly, Jack, people were starting to think you knew and just didn't care." The words hit like a gut punch. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Another pause. "It's complicated," Amanda said finally. "Maddie kind of controlled the narrative. She made it seem like you were too distant, too busy with work, and that Emma, well, that she deserved someone who made her happy." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "Maddie." Again. Of course it was Maddie. "I'm sorry," Amanda added quickly, as if that would somehow soften the blow. "Thanks for letting me know," I said flatly, ending the call before she could say anything else. The next person I heard from was Kevin, one of Blake's buddies. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Dude," Kevin started, laughing nervously, "I had no idea about you and Emma. Blake's been keeping things pretty quiet." "Quiet?" I repeated, my voice icy. "Is that what you call making out at parties and sneaking around behind my back?" "Look, man, I'm not saying what he did was cool," Kevin stammered. "But Blake, he's, just that guy. He doesn't think about the consequences. It's not personal." "Not personal?" I snapped. "He slept with my wife. How the hell is that not personal?" Kevin sighed. "I get it, man, I do. I'm just saying Blake's not exactly a long-term thinker. This whole thing was probably just fun for him. Fun. The word echoed in my head, making my blood boil all over again. Let me make something clear, Kevin, I said, my voice low and steady. If Blake wants to keep having fun, he'd better stay far away from me. Because the next time I see him, I won't just be talking. Kevin muttered something about keeping things cool and hung up, probably regretting the call altogether. By the end of the day, I'd pieced together a horrifying picture. Almost everyone in our group had known or suspected what Emma was doing, but no one said a damn thing. Worse, some of them had actively encouraged it. Maddie, of course, was the ringleader. She'd spun this story about how Emma was the victim of a loveless marriage, how she deserved to have a little fun, and how Blake was the perfect guy to give it to her. I wasn't just angry, I was disgusted. These weren't friends. They were vultures circling around the carcass of my marriage and pretending they were doing it out of concern. That evening, I got another call, this time from Mike. "How's the war going?" he asked, his tone light but laced with genuine concern. "About as bad as you'd expect," I replied. "Turns out half our so-called friends were in on it." Mike let out a low whistle. "Damn, that's brutal. You want my advice?" "Always. Cut them all loose," he said. "Maddie, Blake, the whole lot of them. They're toxic, man. You don't need that kind of energy in your life." "I'm already ahead of you," I said. "Block Maddie this morning. Kevin's probably on his way to the chopping block too." "Good," Mike said. "Now focus on the important stuff. Your lawyer, your finances, and your peace of mind. The rest is just noise." As always, Mike had a way of cutting through the chaos and getting straight to the point. That night, I sat down with a notebook and made a list. On one side, I wrote down the names of people I could trust. On the other, I wrote the names of everyone who'd betrayed me. The second list was a hell of a lot longer than the first, but as I stared at it, something shifted. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry or hurt. I felt determined. This wasn't just about Emma or Blake, or even Maddie anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, about cutting out the rot and starting fresh. And I was ready to begin. A week passed, and I was starting to feel lighter. Cutting off Maddie and the rest of the backstabbers felt like removing a tumor I didn't know was there. Sarah had everything under control, and for the first time in ages, I actually slept through the night. Then Emma decided to waltz back into my life. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was halfway through reorganizing the garage when I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I ignored it. But then it came again, louder, more impatient. I opened the door, and there she was, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, wearing one of those outfits that screamed, "I'm doing great without you." "Jack," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything, just leaned against the door frame and folded my arms. Emma sighed dramatically, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Look, I know things got messy, but we need to figure this out. For both our sakes." "Figure what out?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. She stepped closer, tilting her head like she was trying to appear sincere. "Come on, Jack. We were married for years. We can't just throw that away." I laughed, an actual laugh, loud and bitter. "You're kidding, right? You threw it away the second you decided Blake was worth more than your vows." Her expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "I made a mistake, okay? I let things get out of hand, but that doesn't erase everything we had." "Emma," I said, shaking my head, "what we had was a marriage. What you turned it into was a joke, and I'm not interested in being the punchline anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "You're being so damn stubborn. Do you even care about fixing this?" "Fixing this?" I repeated, incredulous. "You didn't come here to fix anything, Emma. You came here because you're losing. You thought Blake was your golden ticket, and now you're realizing he's just another guy who uses people and moves on. So spare me the crocodile tears." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, She didn't have a snappy comeback. Was I wrong? I pressed. Is Blake still in the picture? Or has he already moved on to his next thrill? Her silence was all the answer I needed. I stepped back and gestured toward the driveway. You can go now, Emma. I think we're done here. But she didn't move. Instead, her face twisted into something uglier than I had ever seen. You know what, Jack? You're pathetic. All this talk about vows and loyalty, but you never once made me feel alive. You think you're some noble victim, but you're just boring. Blake was right. You're the kind of guy women settle for, not the kind they want. Her words were meant to sting, and they did, but not in the way she expected. Because as she spat out her venom, all I could think was, thank God she's showing her true colors now, and not 5 years from now. I smiled, a calm, genuine smile that seemed to catch her off guard. You're right, Emma, I said. I am boring. I work hard, I pay my bills, and I don't need cheap thrills to feel alive. But you know what else I am? Free. Free of you, your lies, and whatever drama you'll bring to the next poor guy who falls for your act. Her jaw tightened, her hands curling into fists at her sides. You'll regret this, she hissed. Doubt it, I replied, closing the door in her face. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door and letting the silence sink in. It felt good, better than I expected, like I'd finally reclaimed something I didn't even know I'd lost. And then my phone buzzed. It was Mike. How's it going? He asked when I picked up. Emma just showed up, I said. Mike groaned. Let me guess. She gave you the whole we can work this out speech? Pretty much, I said, pacing the kitchen. She's good at pretending, I'll give her that. But when I didn't bite, she showed her true colors. Told me I was boring and pathetic. Mike snorted. Classic projection. You're not boring. She's just terrified of being alone. Yeah, well, not my problem anymore, I said. Damn right it's not, Mike said. Now what's the next move? I thought about it for a moment. Finish the divorce, rebuild my life, and maybe, just maybe, find a better class of friends. Mike laughed. That's the spirit. And hey, don't forget to send me an invite when you're throwing your Emma-free life party. You'll be the guest of honor, I said with a grin. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel angry or bitter. I felt free. Emma's words, as harsh as they were, didn't hurt the way they used to. Because I finally realized something. Her opinion didn't matter anymore. I wasn't the villain in her story. I was just her excuse. And now I didn't need to play that role anymore. As I sat on the couch, sipping a beer and watching the sunset through my living room window, I felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something better. And